Okay, I just pulled the little rubber tube out of my mast base, and it did a really good job of making a hole through there. These are some other doubler blocks that I didn't get to show you yesterday. These two are for the main sheet blocks that will get bolted to the thwart, and this one is for the centerboard downhaul. And since this is a prototype, I did them individually, but probably what I'll do is include this block as one piece and maybe just make this a single solid doubler. But the thwart goes on top here, and the hole lines up for the mizzen mast, and so we're going to get that glued on today. There's the fiberglass tube dry fitted in the mizzen thwart, and I sanded a little bit of a taper on the very tip of it to help it go into the mizzen mast base. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually sand it smooth because it has a little bit of waviness from the plastic on the outside. And I'm going to go ahead and glue it in, and I'm going to put my 4 stainless steel screws and glue the fiberglass tube down and put a fillet around the base of it. Yesterday I put a coat of epoxy on these Carlins. These are 3/4 by 1.5 pine, and I've just fit the starboard side, and so I'm going to show you how I'll fit the port side. First, I got this dimension offset at the forward bulkhead where the Carlin intersects the forward bulkhead, and I've marked that, and I've traced the section of the Carlin onto the forward bulkhead, and it's just about perpendicular to the top of the bulkhead, which gives it a slight slope for a backrest angle. And this notch will probably be added to the cut file. Lots of little things to add to the kit as I prototype it. Now that the end of the Carlin will notch into the forward bulkhead, I'm going to spring it back into this knee and clamp it. I used a clamp on this end to keep the aft end of the Carlin from springing out, and just as I did at the forward bulkhead, I've measured the offset at the transom, and I've scribed in the section shape of the Carlin, and again it's approximately perpendicular to the top of the camber of the transom, so I'm going to cut that in now. Now that that notch is cut in, I'm going to just mark on the Carlin the end of the transom. And I'll add 1/8 of an inch to that mark, and that will be where I cut the Carlin off. Now I have the port Carlin installed, dry fitted, and I'm using my same method of toe screwing from a top edge into whatever I want to hold. So I've got the Carlins held in at the knees with a toe screw that I'm using as a dry fit, and I'll use again when I eventually glue the Carlin in. The next thing I'm going to do is make a doubler block here for the oarlock position. And then after that, I'm going to be taking all this apart and sanding the Carlin and giving it another coat of epoxy before I install it. At this point, I've also taken advantage of the opportunity to plane the transom flush with this beam that I've dry fitted, as well as to tweak the shear line, the inwale, and I can hold the butt of the plane on my Carlin and use the plane across the inwale, and likewise I can turn it this way and smooth the two out. I had to go around my screws, but it gave me the opportunity to fare the inwale and the Carlin in a little bit and just make sure everything's flowing nicely. What I'd like to get done today is a second coat of epoxy on the Carlin, as well as installing it, and then if I do that, I can go ahead and glue my foredeck down. Here's the doubler block for the oarlocks, and here is a little cleat for the knee, just to give the side deck more bearing area. And I'm not going to worry about coating the underside of this, because when I flip the boat over and start working on the bottom of the boat, I will be able to get underneath here and coat this really easily. So I'm just going to glue it in place without coating it. With the Carlins installed and the deck beams in, and with 3 coats of epoxy on everything, I'm ready to install the foredeck. And the foredeck has been pre-coated, and I just sanded it, and I'm going to coat it with epoxy. That'll be the final coat, and I will coat the tops of my beams, and I'll put on thickened epoxy, and we'll get this glued down. But first, I have a lot of shavings to clean up. Okay, I've got a light in there for you, and let's see what our glue looks like. So we have a lot of squeeze out. What I'm going to do is clean this out as best I can, and we're going to weigh it and see how much weight I can actually take out of this glue up. I'm just going to use my finger to clean up as much of this glue as I can, and I'll put it on something that we can weigh. Okay, here we are post squeeze out removal. And the answer is 1.3 ounces. Well, that's not a lot, but every little bit counts. Well, that went even better than I thought it would. Fitting these mast sections together was very fast with just a tiny little hand sander, and you saw my technique there. Again, these glass wraps were 29 inches, just wrapped by hand, and that turned out to be just about perfect with minimal sanding. Okay, I'm ready to glue my mast tubes together. This is the main mast. It's shorter because of the tabernacle. And the way I'm going to do this is support the mast in 4 spots. So first I'm supporting the mast at the very bottom. Then I'm supporting the mast at the first joint. Then I have 2 sticks that are ready to support the second tube at the joint. And I have 2 more sticks that can support the top of the mast. And you can see that right now we have a fair amount of play in the mast, and I can hear them clicking back and forth. That's the play in the fiberglass joints. And after we glue these, that is going to be gone. And the way I'm going to do this, basically, is with a straight edge. This is a 48-inch straight edge, and if you hold the straight edge on top of a section of your mast and extend it out onto the section that you're joining, and you look at this gap and you follow that gap down to the end, you can distinguish a large gap at the end and a narrow gap at the beginning. And it just so happens that I have a size of drill bit that fits right into that gap, and I'm going to use that as a feeler gauge and adjust the supports on that end until I close the gap on the end of the straight edge. So So that's the method I use to make sure my masts end up straight. I hope it helps you. Maybe it does, I don't know. But hopefully tomorrow we can continue getting the cockpit ready for primer. And that's about all for today.